Hello.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm well.
Good.
Everyone, this is Hayes Hawk. And Hayes, you are an advanced doula, student midwife,
Hmm.
life coach, spiritual mentor, mama, all of the things.
All the things.
And we are so honored to have you here with us today to talk about ancestral technology in pregnancy, birth, and beyond, specifically African ancestral technology.
Wow, that's
And
an amazing name.
I am so excited because we have so much to learn from you today.
Oh, thank you.
Um, so thank you for being here. I'm so happy to see you guys joining us. I might actually I'm going to turn off the comments so that they don't scroll over your face. But if you guys want to leave us questions, you can do so in the question box. So, oops, which I just accidentally opened. Oh, Hayes, you're going to have some patience with me because I'm a bit of a mess when it comes to technology. But there we go.
You did it.
I did it. Um, so, uh, we're gonna dig into your journey specifically, which I am really excited to do. But I figured it would be good to begin with some history,
Okay.
and talk about granny midwives and who they were and how, and with whom they practiced and who they helped and the persecution that happened and how it continues to happen. But I would just love to hear a little bit about that from you. And I found a very short quote here by Shafia Monroe
Love her.
that really stood out to me. Yeah. She said, one of the darkest moments in US history was the systematic eradication of the African American midwife from her community, resulting in a legacy of birth injustices.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So with that, would you mind sharing with our followers, the people that are with us today and who will be watching this, um, a little bit about the history?
Yeah, so the granny midwives, like you mentioned, were, you know, women who took care of the community and usually also birth in the white community. It's
Right.
something that's, since slavery was done, but the knowledge was kept and honored, and everything from the herbs to the traditional ways, all of that was kept. When it was eradicated, the beginning of that whole atrocity began because doctors noticed that they were losing patients and
Mm-hmm.
that the midwives were not. The granny midwives were not. They, in very rare circumstances that were beyond their control, would lose a patient, but not because of infection or mismanagement or neglect of care.
Right.
The lamas. So they wanted to learn, study from them, which they did. And then they proceeded to shut them down. They proceeded to destroy their names, their reputations. They started by saying that they were unsanitary, that
Mm-hmm.
they were not knowledgeable, that they weren't learned.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they just did. I mean, they destroyed these women.
And they even called it witchcraft,
Yes,
right? And
yes.
yeah,
Every time there's a powerful woman in the world,
right.
it's called witchcraft.
Yep.
Not to take from the witchcraft, I'm one of the witchiest of them all, but
Right. But it was meant in a negative way, for
yeah, they
sure.
meant it in a derogatory way,
Yeah.
you know, so
Mm-hmm.
and they did this systematically and deliberately, and one of the last beautiful facilities was in Chicago, and it was a community midwifery center, and the physicians there destroyed that too. They just shut it down. They learned from them first. There's always an appropriation first. Get all the things,
Yep.
and then act like you already had it. You always knew it,
Yeah.
and it didn't come from anybody else but you.
Yeah.
Destroyed them. And so it went way underground. And when it became a thing, quote unquote a thing, the midwives, the white midwives, studied it and learned from the ones they could. But then, because they knew that these women were intelligent women but could not read or write, they were
Mm-hmm.
illiterate, they decided that these things needed to be in a book. They needed to be studied. You needed to take an exam. All these things that were not in the sphere, the world sphere for these granny midwives. They just couldn't keep up with the change in the construct. And then it was taken over. And which is why you have the disproportionate amount of Black or brown midwives in the midwifery world. It's a very separate kind of world. We're integrating it, but it's a very slow process. It's very hard to find preceptors who will,
Mm-hmm.
take you or that you feel safe with, because
Mm-hmm.
it can very easily go into a, oh, okay, master slave thing, because it is, when you're apprenticing, you are doing it for free. You're doing it for school
Yeah.
credit and for skills and for all that. So if there's not a mindfulness happening
Yeah.
in the way that the apprenticeship is being performed, it can very well tip, you know, tip over. Because there's also, if there's not awareness of the microaggressions in the room, the way that you are spoken to. I mean, and it's just a very hard situation to navigate it. And I've had really great preceptors and I've had not so great preceptors. And, but it all comes from the way that midwifery was appropriated here in the United States. And
Mm-hmm.
these women in the South really built communities and cities. They really helped birth them. They not only did childbirth, they also were family counselors. They were the herbs that, they knew about the herbs, so they took care of the wellness as well, especially in the Black communities, because they were very separate and you weren't allowed to go to see the white doctor.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
Right. And they also, from what I understand, an important component of granny midwifery was also spiritual knowledge
Yes.
and
Yes.
spiritual mentorship. Is that a really big part of it?
It was
Yeah.
for the midwives. It was a huge piece of it, and it's now a piece that midwives of color are bringing in, doulas of
Mm-hmm.
color are bringing in,
Mm-hmm.
because it's you can't separate that from us, and we live our life through that filter. So that's why it's so important for women who want to have a room full of women that look like themselves. They should be able to have that because they speak the language. They carry that energy with them automatically. And it's their right to have who they want in the room, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a huge piece. They were very important to the spiritual growth and the spiritual grounding of a community. And I find that that's one of the reasons why I gravitated towards that work, is because of the spiritual component, is because of the idea that we are these divine beings in this human form, and I think it's important to convey that and to keep that going in these families. So when I go to a family's home, or now when I'm virtually with the family, I'm looking at the whole family. We're talking to the whole family because they are very much an important piece in that child's birth.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah.
want them all to get it, even the siblings, to get how important they're witnessing of this new life coming through, this lineage coming through, how important it is and what it means.
That is just everything. I feel like that was everything to me in my experiences of becoming a mama and the two births that I've had. And I know I shared a little bit with you about that, but when we found out that Maxwell was breech, I had many friends who had experienced the same thing, and they were going the more conventional way of birth, and their doctors basically said that, you know, your only option is a C-section.
Oh, so not true.
I know it's so not true, but it was thanks to my doula and my midwife that I learned about the options that I did have.
Yeah.
And when I was stressed, I just loved how my midwife pointed out to me that, you know, she didn't make it about my body or all the medical language that she could have given to me. She talked to me about how I could use the fact that Maxwell was breech and the stress that I was feeling around it as an opportunity to talk to my son in my belly and go, hey, buddy, we're in this together. And this is what stress feels like, but this is what we can do with it. We're going to like turn this into an opportunity. We're going to figure it out. We're going to surrender and lean into what's happening. And to just have somebody speak to me about the spiritual journey of it was absolutely everything. And I now happen to have a son who faces challenges and setbacks like a freaking pro.
Yeah, there's always a reason for a breach.
Him. Yes. Incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So this is hugely important. And I would love to hear about your journey because you touched on it. What drew you to this journey towards specifically the ancestral technique? Mm-hmm. And I know you went to Ghana to study. I would love to hear a little bit about your journey and how that changed things for you.
Yeah, so I was born in the South. I was raised in Europe and all around the United States because my dad was in the Air Force. But the earth and being rooted and grounded is always something that has drawn me, pulled me. It speaks to me, and it's where I get my strength from. And I didn't realize how much that would come back to me until I was pregnant with my son. And when I had my son, I was the first in my tribe to get pregnant, to get married, and to decide to use a midwife. Now, if you had asked me before then if I was going to use a midwife, I didn't even think about it, even though I knew that most of my family members had been born at home, right?
Yeah.
But it wasn't a conversation that my mom and I had because my mom was in Europe on a military base. So, you know, that's what I saw her have. My sister was in a hospital. But when I got pregnant, that's what I decided to do. And being grounded in my practice and learning more about my history and understanding African traditions was really important to me. And I also studied the indigenous traditions because my family has been so entwined with the Native peoples. So I honored it, and I've always, done sweats and all those things. So for me, it was a very natural thought to just kind of go in and go to the ground, take root there. In my pregnancy, I decided to go really, really like traditional. I didn't want any of the things. I trusted and knew that my body could do it. So when I got into labor, my midwife, her best friend was there, and she said, well, I can come and support you if you like. And I looked at my husband, and I thought, yeah, maybe so. maybe he needs some support.
Yeah.
So she was there, and I didn't think anything of it, but literally an hour and a half in, I was saying to her, what is this you're doing? What is this called? Because you're saving my life. And she said, I'm a doula. And I was like, okay, so what is that? And what does that mean? And where's that come from? And how did you study? And she's like, well, honey, how about if we talk about this after you have your baby? Because I'm in mid going. I'm surging and things are happening. I'm like, well, okay, so how did you do it? I'm just so into what she's saying. And she said, we can wait. I said, no, I really want to know. And I wrote down everything that she told me that she did. Like all the things she got certified in to help her.
While in labor, you're taking notes.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, and mind you, I was good in school, but I was never that note taker, that studious, that person. This was something literally that wasn't me, that it just, she spoke to me, and I wrote it all down. After my son weaned himself, it was 3 years of nursing. After he finished, that's when I started implementing the things, that the trainings, the certifications, all the things that she did. And then I did a few more things. But the fact that she was so well rounded,
Mm-hmm.
she had herbology, she had nutrition, she was certified in all these things, Reiki massage, Reiki work, Heller massage, all these things. And so I did all of it. I did every single thing.
Wow.
And it does inform me now. But then when I decided that I wanted to train with Salam, Queen Mother Salam, who actually was a student of Ina May Gaskin's on the farm. She was the only African American student. She is amazing. She's now Queen Mother in Africa. She's revered and honored, and rightly so. I don't think she gets nearly any of the kudos that she deserves here in the United States. Only with the Black midwives and the Black midwives, we know who she is. But, she's the one that spoke to me about the ancestors. She's the one that actually had me start listening to them and trusting them, because she threw me in Ghana. Like, she just threw me in. Prior to that, I had caught one baby, and that baby, I was actually there as the doula, but the midwife had just left, and then everything changed. And
wow.
I called her back, but
yeah,
but,
it happens.
there in time for the placenta, but I had to do the baby. But when I was in Ghana, Salama, she just threw me in, and she was like, "You gotta listen, you gotta trust." And the one thing, the huge piece that I learned from these traditional midwives in Ghana, first of all, sidebar, they were incredible, and they were ancient. You couldn't tell how old they were. Some of them you knew were over 90 something. Some of them couldn't see, some of them couldn't hear, but they saw everything and they could hear everything.
I'm getting goosebumps. That is wild.
I was floored, and I realized that, you don't always need eyes to see what's happening in a labor. And so I can sometimes know there's a cord. I can know that the baby's asynclitic before we have the signs that they are. I'm hearing it or I'm feeling it. And that is something that she taught me there, and they taught me, because some of the women who couldn't see could see everything. They used their hands to feel everything. Their sense of smell was, they could smell mech. That's a very hard thing to smell meconium, unless you're putting your nose up into it. They could do that. And the ones who couldn't hear could see deeply, and they could feel deeply. And then watching them work together, there was hardly any speaking. It was all telepathy. Like, they didn't have to speak. They knew each other so well, and they knew what was happening, that they were just
effortless
and in tune and listening and trusting. And so sometimes when I'm speaking to my clients in labor, sometimes it's me and sometimes it's not me. Sometimes it's a voice through me. Sometimes it's their ancestors, because I can tell you, these rooms get really crowded.
I bet they do.
I'm like, do you have a great grandmother named so and so? Because they're right there. You can see them, you can feel them, and if the mom's grounded enough and in tune enough, she can too. She can access too. And some of the things that I do prenatally are about getting moms prepared and in tune that way, so that they can hear and listen and be able to speak to their babies, to know what their babies need them to do.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's why midwifery is so amazing, because it's a mother-led craft. We're not leading. We're there just in case. And the mom's leading. Right. And if she can lead and trust her intuition, how beautiful is that? And if she can listen to her guides and her ancestors and spirits, how beautiful is that? How empowering is that? What a beautiful rite of passage.
Incredible. What keeps showing up in my mind is, like, I see what you're talking about and feeling it. And then next to it is the birth world in hospitals, which, by the way, can be absolutely amazing. And thank goodness I ended up at the hospital hospital with Maxwell and had a beautiful experience. So no,
Yeah, no, you can
you know,
definitely
no, yeah,
take this experience in a hospital.
for sure. But you just look at that, and I don't know how high is the cesarean rate in the U.S. I don't know
Oh,
what the percentage
darling,
is,
we're
but
like number 50, 51. It's bad. We're bad.
it's
It's
through
bad.
the roof. And
It's through the
there's
roof.
because it's doctor-led births and not mother-led births. And
Hmm.
I feel, and again, cesareans, thank God for them because they can be life-saving
When they're
often, a
needed,
lot of
yeah,
the time
when it's
when it is
appropriate.
necessary. But it is pushing a lot of mamas that do not need. Uh, you know, and when you look at these two pictures next to each other, it's just baffling how
Yeah.
far off we've gone.
Hmm.
And that innate wisdom that you're talking about and the guidance is like it's here for all of us. It's not just for a few select
Yeah.
people, you
I,
know.
I really believe that. Okay, this is my theory, my thought.
Yeah.
Once birth and death were removed from the home, they became this mystery somewhere out here in the ether, some, this
Mm-hmm.
unknown scary place. So now it's surrounded by fear.
Mm-hmm.
When birth and death were in the home, it was life. It was
Mm.
viewed as life and normal and
Yeah.
not frightening. And now, you know, because of that, there's no kinship with it. There's no relationship with it. And so everything occurs as not normal and scary, very, life altering and bad,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not, it's just life. It's
Yeah.
the both of them. And for me, seeing life and death, because I'm also a death doula,
Oh wow.
yeah, is, it's that same breath. And it can
Yeah.
be that same celebration, even in the midst of tragedy, even in the midst of, you know, extreme sorrow and grief.
Mm-hmm.
Honoring the life is the key.
Mm.
And I really think that's why people rush to hospitals, because the normalcy of life and death is gone,
Yeah.
because it's not in the home. When I travel to other countries, and I travel a lot because I love studying midwifery everywhere and
Mm.
herbology everywhere. So from Cuba to Italy to Mexico, in Costa Rica, I've just traveled.
Wow.
The beautiful thing about other countries is they have generations in their home.
Yeah.
Life and death happen in their home. There's a normalcy that is expressed. So for them to go to a hospital for birth is a different languaging. In
Mm-hmm.
some countries it's normal now. Like Brazil, it's normal now.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't before, but it's normal now, right? Quote
Yeah.
unquote. Um, but the countries that embrace life as life is happening, it's a
Right.
beautiful, normal experience that they cherish. Both of them, they honor both of them.
Yeah.
And I wish we had more of that here in America.
I agree with you. And that's beautifully said. That is really beautifully said. Um, so true. So how long were you in Ghana for?
I was in Ghana. The first time I went, I was there for 6 weeks. When I went with Salama, it was a program called Midwives on the Move.
Wow.
And I believe that program is still in place. And I know that Salam is in Georgia. She's in Atlanta working with Karina. I wish I was there working with her too. um, but yeah, I was there for 6 weeks. We were in Accra, we were in uh, Kamasi Aprudunka is the village that we were in the most.
Mm,
But I got to travel around a lot and see a lot of villages and see how their hospitals are run. And it's some of the times that I was there, I would leave where we were staying because I was the one on call, and I would travel down to the hospital in the dark with a flashlight. I know, crazy. And I would get there, and sometimes it was a beautiful experience. Sometimes it was a heart-wrenching experience.
mm,
I saw things in Africa, in Ghana, in the villages that I will never have to see here, which is a blessing. You know,
mm.
because we have a lot more available to us. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that I wanted to make sure I did when I was there was learn from the midwives who were there.
Mm-hmm.
Learn about how their nutrition and what they used and how they sustained themselves with hardly anything.
Right.
Because there was truly hardly anything. And some of the reasons why it was heart-wrenching was, there was one incubator, but it wasn't plugged in. It didn't work. There was no electricity. Sometimes there was oxygen. Sometimes there wasn't.
Oh, wow.
Sometimes we had, when I went, I brought lots of supplies and equipment, lots of things with me and
Mm-hmm.
you know, because there's not much there and you just never know. But they would make do with what they had. And, I saw midwives grab, different herbs and things off of the, out of the ground to use, and it worked. So who was I to say, that's unsanitary, don't do that? It
Mm-hmm.
totally worked. I watched it and I was just like, okay, what was that?
Yeah.
What's the equivalent of that in America? Just trying to figure these things out. And how they treat moms who bleed too much, how they treat moms who are anemic. How do they do this? So they're doing it just with herbs, plants, food,
Yeah. Incredible. So what would you say is the, if we compare midwifery care here with African ancestral technique, like what are the differences, or rather, what does the ancestral technique add to more conventional midwifery care, if
I
that's the
don't know.
right term for it?
I don't know if it's ancestral technique. I doubt they would call it that, but
Okay.
I think it's more of the honoring, ancestral honoring. I
Mm,
think the difference is that they honor the wisdoms of their tradition,
mm,
their culture. They
yeah.
honor it. And I pray that I continue to do that too. And
Mm,
I think the more that we honor the root of where we come from, the better we show up,
yeah.
the better we are as people, and the better caretakers we are, caregivers.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, I would say that would be the main piece, and the idea that it's a normal experience and there's no need
Mm-hmm.
to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
I watched those women just basically sit around. The things that they would do would be touch the mama. If the mama wanted to be touched, they would touch her.
Right.
They would rub that belly, massage that baby out.
Mm.
They would give her foot rubs and massage with all the shea butter in the world.
Ah,
And it
is
was
that
just so much love and so beautiful. And then outside somewhere down, you can hear people singing and music, holding space for what was happening with this woman, you know. Yeah,
so
beautiful,
amazing?
beautiful.
It's that low tech, high touch.
Yes,
It's something
low
that I
tech,
heard
high touch. I love that.
which is something that I heard for the first time when I met my midwife, and I was just like, oh
That
yeah,
so sounds
yes,
like her. That
that's
sounds like her.
yeah, yep, that's
Really.
Davy. It's and it's like, of
Yeah,
course, that's what I want.
yeah.
So, how would you say that Black birth workers specifically would affect the birth experience of Black parents? I mean, it could be an obvious answer, and part of it absolutely is, but I would just love to hear you talk a little bit about that, why it's so important.
Because they can drop their shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
They can breathe deeply. They know they're safe. They know they're supported. They know they're seen. That's the first piece, because we as Black people live at a high stress volume, which now more of the world is experiencing because of what's happening in this climate.
Mm-hmm.
But that's been our everyday. It's kind of
Yeah.
like this all the time.
Yeah.
And with the systemic injustice that's happened in medicine with Black people,
Mm-hmm.
it's the relationship is tarnished.
Mm-hmm.
It's tarnished. So it's very important that if they choose to have somebody that looks like them take care of their experience, that they should have that. that's their right, and that should be readily available. Unfortunately, it's not readily available. You know, I'm
Yeah.
encouraging all the Black women I can to become doulas, because it doesn't have an age range. You can decide at 50 that you want to be a doula. You know,
For sure.
you can be, you know, there's some young ones that are coming up. They already know. They're starting now. They're 16. They're training.
Yeah.
And it's just very, very important that that there be more access. But because of more access, there needs to be more of them. Same as
Yeah.
midwifery. There's not a lot of Black midwives. There's only one Filipino midwife. There's not a lot of Latina. There's just not, you know. So the more we can get into the midwifery school, be able to be supported through the school, which is a very challenging thing, by the way. Be able to be supported through preceptorship, and then be able to afford the test and the licensing and the business and all the things. You know, they need community support for that.
Yeah.
It's very challenging to do on their own. Most of the midwives, so the white midwives who have done it, have either been supported through their families or married or something like that. They have a different experience. We're already challenged because of the experience here in America. So that to try to do this, which has occurred as a very elitist field, is challenging. It's very challenging. And I have been blessed personally, because even though I say elitist field, that's a very old guard of midwifery. You know, the midwives I'm coming up with now really support me, really believe in me, really are calling me forth. And I'm so grateful. And I don't have that same issue or feeling about, you know, I still feel safe. You know, I still feel supported and I feel seen. But I think it's out of a relationship that's been honed.
Yeah.
You know, so I know I can call Sarah Howard. I know I can call, you know, people. I have these relationships with people that I know, even if they don't look like me, see me and support me.
Right. So I would love to talk about how we can help support, but I would love to just chat a little bit more about racism in the birth world. We know, you know, we have all the statistics that are devastating, what it looks like for Black mothers.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking specifically about birth workers and how racism shows up in that field, which you already talked a little bit about, but how, like, what are some ways that it does show up?
Wow. Well, I can give you both sides. So sometimes I will have, well, before now, now I'm a little bit more seen. So people will know that I'm African American, right? But before then, if I was just speaking to them on the phone, they wouldn't always necessarily say, oh, she's Black, until I would come to their home and they'd see me for our first meeting, right? And then they would kind of be like, oh. And then they're, you know, if they had children, this happens a lot. I can tell which families have Black friends or friends of color.
See it in the children?
I can see it in the children. If they're terrified of me, like, oh, really? Yeah.
Wow.
But sometimes they're not expecting it, and maybe I've been the first Black person in their home.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And usually I don't get those jobs, which is great because that's not an energy I want to be in.
Yeah.
But in the hospital world, how that shows up is that when I bring in families, if a family of color gets treated differently than a family that's not of color. So they will ask different questions on the intake. My families that I bring in that are of color get asked so many questions, from, are you on drugs? Have you used drugs? Do you sell drugs? Which
they ask if they sell drugs.
Yeah. Are you being abused? Have you been abused? Is your husband abusing you? Has he been in jail? Those are questions that every now and then a white family will get, very rarely in my case, I've only had it happen a few times, but never have they asked if they are selling or dealing or if they have been in jail. And I had an experience once where I was at a hospital with a beautiful Black family, and she had a bruise on her leg, and they called Child Protective Services and the police on this family because they said they suspected child abuse. Meanwhile, next to them is this young white couple, and they are on something. They're rolling on something. Like, we can see it, it's obvious. But who they focused on was the Black family because they were profiled. Now, that occurrence happens all the time. The way they're spoken to, all the time. It doesn't matter if they have a doctorate or if they dropped out of high school. It has no bearing whatsoever. It doesn't matter if you're famous, as we know.
Yeah.
Kira, bless her heart, rest in peace. My gosh. And, thank goodness Serena Williams knew enough about her body and her health to take care of it and handle it and make it happen.
Right.
But, right now, my main concern and my focus is to educate women of color, to empower them to speak up, to educate them about all of their choices, all of their rights, to own their body and their births in the hospital, and to make sure that they have somebody with them. They have a doula who can watch what's happening. I have, by myself, seen a couple of things that if I hadn't caught could have been bad. Allergies to certain things, and then they were going to give them. It's like, no, she can't have that. Like, you've got to be so focused in the room, but you have to be hyper focused when it's a person of color in the room.
Yeah.
They just kind of don't even see them.
Yeah. So what are things we can do to support, to make sure that more Black women or women of color can get their education, whether that's doula or midwife education? How can we support in making that happen?
There are lots of organizations that support exactly what you're talking about. So I know that Californians for the Advancement of Midwives is doing the most that they can do to support that. There's several, like you mentioned, Sophia Moreau. She, by herself, is birthing like a tribe of doulas.
Amazing.
She's doing really great work. And there's just so many like that. But you can just Google, African American doula trainings, and those organizations are what you want to focus on. That. And if you see a campaign, support it, share it, speak about it. If you know of a community birth center and there's no people of color there, ask them why.
Right. Yeah.
Why do you have somebody there? Have you tried? Just we have to hold people accountable. And it's not that we're making them crazy wrong, but we're bringing light to a situation that they might, because if you don't think about the fact that you're always in a white space and you're white, because you're always in a white space, right? I am conscious of the fact that I'm a Black woman in a white space all the time, because it happens all the time. And I cherish when I am a Black woman in a space that's full of Black people. That's great, but it's very rare. So to have that conversation, because a lot of midwives, when they have people come in, they don't have anybody on staff that looks like them. There's nobody in the room that looks like them. And that could just change a huge piece, but that piece comes with the need to study and educate yourselves on what that means and what that looks like.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Those are great steps. And then also, we're starting to have these conversations. So whoever is on here with us right now, spread the word. Use your social networks, whatever they may be, and talk about this and share some statistics and talk about the need and the things that we can do to support. So let's have the conversation,
Yeah.
which is very very important. And I found online too that if you feel called to be a midwife or doula, there's the Midwives Alliance of North America. They have a lot of good general information about becoming a midwife.
Yeah. The MANA is a huge organization
Right.
that works with midwives and is trying to implement these same things that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Because it's always been one way, and now we're asking for this huge change. So, but it is a great resource if you are interested in becoming a midwife.
Yeah.
To start there and ask some questions.
Wonderful.
Some really good questions.
Yeah. And on if you click the link in our bio, it'll take you to weareama.com, which is our website, and we've started a what do we call it? A scholarship fund for birth workers, aspiring birth workers of color, to help support, to help fund, their studies, so that we can. I mean, it's something small that we could do to help make that happen. But there are so many other organizations and companies doing the same thing. So use the Google.
Use the Google.
Just find whatever you're drawn
use
to.
It for good.
Use it for good, and send in a check or post about these organizations. We really need to create some change here. Yeah,
it does make a difference if people do that. I put a post up about the Martin Luther King hospital that's here in South Central LA.
Yeah.
Because they were threatening to shut it down.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
They were going to stop the funding, and it was a promise that was made to that community. It's important because there's no hospitals there that will meet the needs of these Black and brown people that are down there. And my sharing it just picked up. You know, I'm so adamant because I take people there. It's a great facility. They do great work. You know, I hope it doesn't shut down. I don't know what Governor Newsom's going to do now. It was kind of put on hold, but I'm praying that it stays open and that whatever they need to do structurally to make it happen, if they need to make a change in the guards, do it. Do whatever you need to do to keep it viable and open and there as an asset, please.
Yes. Hayes, how can we support you or follow you? Where can people find you?
I don't have a website.
What?
I know. Gosh, I haven't had one for decades. I am on Instagram at I am Hayes Hawk Rosen, and on Facebook at Hayes Hawk. I probably will end up getting a website, but right now, those are the places you can find me.
That would be amazing. But that's where you guys can find her. You're too busy to create a website.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I don't have time.
Too crazy.
Somebody's going to have to do it for me.
Somebody has to do it. Well, maybe somebody here. Step up. Reach out to Hayes and create a website. I appreciate your time so much and everything that you've shared with us today. I wish we could go on for hours, and I really do hope that I get to meet you in person someday.
I hope we do.
All of this is over. Yeah, but I keep hearing so many amazing things about you from my doula, from people in the birth world and other people, and you are truly loved.
Oh, thanks so much.
And I see why. I appreciate you so much. And thank you to everyone who tuned in. We will be posting this video on our website shortly so that people will have access to it in the future as well, because this is important information. And please, everyone, go do whatever you can do to help create change. Post, send a check, whatever it is. Talk about this. Let's create change. It is time. It has been time for a very long time.
For a long time. Thank you.
Again,
this is lovely.
Thank you so much. Love to you, and I hope to talk to you again soon. Mwah. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.